Welcome to FarmEd podcast number 6. Today we're focusing on positive health, well-being and resilience, which of course post-COVID incredibly pertinent and something that more and more all of us, particularly here at FarmEd, will be focusing on in the future. I'm Jonty Brunye, the manager here at FarmEd, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with 3 of my heroes. We've got Russ Carrington, sustainable food and farming advocate, former general manager of the Pasture-Fed Livestock Association and rural youth champion. Holly Beckett, farmer's daughter from a famous farming family, a Nuffield farming scholarship colleague of mine, and now project director at Focused Farmers, focusing on mindfulness and psychology and neuroscience, particularly for rural workers and farmers. And Dr. Sally Bell, GP, and now particularly with focusing on her passion for lifestyle medicine, which we'll hear about in a minute. First question, just get the debate going, or the conversation going. Holly, tell me a little bit about your journey, your youth, your Nuffield scholarship, and how you got here today.
Okay, where to start? So, as you say, farmer's daughter, that was a good description, thank you, Jonty. Grew up on the family farm, but we've heavily diversified now. Still farming about 1,200 acres of arable, but we have a farm shop, a restaurant, a cookery school, conference facilities, and 1,200 people that help us and the family do that. So leadership and people management was something that I was really, really keen to look at, which is where I took my Nuffield journey.
Yeah.
So what I was really interested was actually practical things that you could do for people development, increase your leadership skills. I'd done a lot of leadership training and it was all really motivational, and then you get back to the office and you think, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and it's all going to be marvellous. And then sort of a few weeks later, you were kind of in the back, same sort of, general stresses and strains of daily life and doing the same thing. That's what I was really keen to look at. And I looked at coaching, I looked at personality profiling, I looked at neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, as part of Nuffield, which is all about understanding the unconscious mind. So I guess started to understand, why did I keep finding myself in that same place? And then I came across mindfulness and meditation, and that was a real game changer for me. And I thought all farmers should learn a little bit about it.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I've been doing for the last few years. Was lucky enough at Frank Parkinson Ag Trust, gave me a bit of money to start a pilot project, and we've had some amazing results.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll come back to this in a minute. Russ, tell me about your journey. How did you get here today? Not to FarmEd, by the way, but career-wise and personal-wise.
So I grew up on a family farm in Herefordshire, and I was always very interested in farming, but didn't really have an opportunity to work within the family business. So I went and explored another career. I trained as a civil engineer, studied 5 years at Cardiff University, living in a city, which was a real eye-opener to me, somebody from the countryside. But I never really lost that passion for agriculture, and after a few years of working as an engineer, I decided that there was actually loads of really key things that engineers were talking about, how they were planning for the future, preparing for sort of post-carbon economies and the sustainability of materials, the carbon footprints of buildings. And I thought to myself, why isn't farming having this same conversation, talking about this stuff and planning for the future? Because farming does have an impact, both positive and negative, on the environment and on carbon footprinting. So I really set about exploring how I could bring my engineering skills to agriculture and to follow my passion about creating change and a transition in agriculture to make it better and make food better. And so with a group of other farmers back in 2010, we first came together and we decided to establish the Pasture-Fed Livestock Association. I later took on the role to manage that and grow it to a 600 strong member organisation. And we developed a brand called Pasture for Life for 100% pasture-fed beef, lamb and dairy products to really recognise and award sustainably produced ruminant livestock on beautiful pastures in Britain. And it's been an amazing journey, and I've learnt so much about how to help farmers transition, how to help them change, what gives them the confidence to be able to do that. And now I've stepped back from that role, but I'm really looking to take my learnings and experience to other countries, and particularly around the world. So I'm now involved in a European focus group looking at sustainable beef production and trying to pull together a new network for organisations working with regenerative farming right around the world. I'm really excited to take some of our experience from the UK further afield.
Brilliant. And you've got a particular interest in rural youth as well, is that right?
That's right, yes. So kind of alongside my day job, I've really been trying to see what I can do to help rural youth, and in particular because I see them as the future. They're the future leaders we have to bring about the change in the future. So I've held a number of roles within the rural youth and young farmers movements in the UK, but latterly I was the chairman for Rural Youth Europe, which represents around 500,000 young people in around 21 different countries, really working to develop their skills and intercultural exchange to help them come together and learn from one another and change their rural areas.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Sally Bell, tell me about your impressive journey.
I think I'm the odd one out. So I'm the only one without a farming background. And so when you start talking farming, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. But I'm eager to learn. Yes, it's all about food. So yeah, I'm a GP and I've been qualified now for 21 years and conventionally trained. And I think right back to when I was training, I used to really struggle with the fact they would learn all about the body and everything it needed. And then it'd be like, right, forget that. The last few years of your training, you'll get people into a disease category, follow a guideline and use pharmaceutical drugs to help sort of treat disease and suppress symptoms. And it bothered me. And then as I kind of worked as a GP, I went overseas to work in Africa for a few years and I came back in 2008. And just a lot had changed in the health system. There'd been a real big drive to bring uniformity of care by making guidelines all the same. And where before it had been, more about a guide, it was more law and we really had to stick to it. There'd been a real breakdown in care in general practice because we needed to make more appointments available. I no longer would see the same person. It would be 40 patients a day, 10 minutes at a time. They didn't know me, I didn't know them. And I ended up feeling like a pharmaceutical vending machine where it's like, oh, diabetes, yes, take these drugs. Oh, blood pressure, take these drugs. And if you didn't have a diagnosis, well, let's just wait till you're ill enough and then we'll stick you in a disease category and then we'll treat you. And anyway, I ended up losing my own health and had all these weird and wonderful symptoms and couldn't get a diagnosis, but ended up one day I couldn't run on the treadmill anymore and I went back to my doctor going, look, this isn't normal, like something's wrong, and went through the system and got my diagnosis and got my medication. And I remember saying to my neurologist, like, is there anything I can do to help get myself better? And I just got this wry smile and I had another prescription passed across to me and he said, here, Sally, take this. And I walked away and it was the real turning point for me where I was like, no, there has to be a better way. And I went back to the books and I thought, well, what does my body need? And that was the first time I'd ever heard about the gut microbiome, and we never studied nutrition, so I delved into nutrition. And I realised, when I trained, we all thought it was about genetics, but now, with chronic disease, 10% is genetics, but 90% is our everyday decisions that we're making. And I created a framework around 5 foundations: nutrition, sleep, movement, rest, and connection. So connection with self, connection with others, and connection with that sense of purpose. And I started to help people recover their health using this framework, and really, instead of treating disease, treating the individual and work out what was going on in their life and help coaching them back to make those changes. Mm-hmm. And then what happened, about 18 months ago, I realised I hadn't looked far enough upstream, and I realised I needed to work out actually where our food came from. And this has led to my journey with connecting with you guys and the farming community. I had no idea how broken the food system was. Yeah. No idea, And so I realised it wasn't just about what people ate, but it's where it came from. And so I've been on this whole journey now of connecting, joining the dots.
Yeah, crucial, absolutely crucial. Holly, this interconnection here, does it start with mindset, mindfulness, farmers, not farming? Tell us a little bit more about maybe focus farmers and how that fits in.
Yeah, that was amazing listening to Sally, and it would be wonderful if that was a more prevalent attitude I was just wondering, actually, thinking of what you were saying about genetics, because this idea of epigenetics is starting to become sort of more prevalent, and that's about, you know, our environment and what we're in. But I definitely agree with you on that sense of purpose. But I think to have that, sometimes you do have to stop and take a moment, but it's not about, so mindfulness in its essence is about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, which is almost impossible because that's how we're wired very, very early on. We wire in all these different judgments in our model of the world. But I guess taking a few moments to actually start to pay attention to your senses, and in that I think you develop more of a sense of being able to listen to your body. And to control your mind. We have 70,000 thoughts every day, and much of it is just noise. Most of it is just noise, trying to work out what's going on. And so by managing that a little bit better, you can quieten the noise. And that's, I think, when the real golden nuggets of thoughts come up. And that's often associated with what your purpose might be or what you really need. And then the next challenge is possibly sometimes being brave enough to follow that.
I think no, like I really agree. So I with a lot of my patients, like I think often our body knows what it needs, but we have become so distracted as a nation, you know, and I think a lot of kind of mild and moderate mental health issues are because we're either in the future constantly worrying about what's going to happen, and you know, or we're in the past worried what has happened. And actually the art of mindfulness is about being present, because often in the present there isn't much to be worried about, really, and it's a real art and skill that I think we have lost the ability to be still, and we are afraid of silence, and we're afraid of disconnection. And you know, that challenge of disconnecting from our phones and from the TV, and there's so much fear of that, isn't there? And actually I think we do need people to teach us how to be present, how to notice what's going on around, because the only time we can enjoy is now. That's all we've got. And actually that ability to kind of listen to what we need and to be in touch with who we are is just so fundamental to health. And we need help because we are so distracted. Like my kids are, like teaching them to be still is really challenging. Yeah.
Addiction, I think, is probably the key there, because not only are we think about nutrition, massively addicted to all of these sugary foods. I think there's still a large amount of the population that is still on this narrative that fat is bad, and hasn't quite understood the science around that. And without putting fingers, actually it's sugar that's led to the obesity problems that we've got in the system. But it's not just food that we're addicted to, or sometimes a bit too much booze or smoking. We're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to social media, and we're addicted to thinking. And that is it is a change in mindset for farmers. And what I do try and encourage through workshops and the people I work with is to just give an exercise a go, which is just maybe 5 minutes for 5 days in a row. Because until they do that, they can't really get the essence of what having that few moments of silence or stillness can give you. And it would be quite healthy to get people to get addicted to meditation, I think.
Absolutely. So mindset, mindfulness, stopping, slowing down, listening to your body, listening to what's around us, and maybe getting a bit that connection to our environment, crucial. Definitely one thing we're trying to do here at FarmEd. And then the nutrition side, and you mentioned fats. Russ, do you want to say a little bit about, with your ex-Pasture for Life hat on, the role of really healthy meats in this debate?
Yeah, so we've been doing some research really to try and understand the influence of an animal's diet on the nutritional quality of meat and milk in particular. And there's some of the science hasn't been published yet, but Newcastle University have been really doing some great stuff. And that is just seeing the influence of, say, changing the diet and feeding grains, actually how that affects the omega-3 fatty acid components of meat and milk. And actually countering that, the more you increase the diversity in pastures and the animals' diets, the more those good fats and good nutrients increase. And omega-3 fatty acids are particularly important to our brain health, because we need them when we're building our brains and creating memories and building our knowledge. We really need, our bodies need those components to access to make sure our brains are fully functioning, because our brain is mostly fat.
Yes, it is. Michael Carr.
So we've got a bit of mindfulness, we're eating well. Sally, tell me a little bit more about your 5 foundations and how they all fit together.
Yeah, I think they feed into each other. And I think so often people will say to me, okay, like, which is the most important one? And I think if I'm really, really pushed, and often with people when they're a real mess, the place I start with is with sleep. And so we know that sleep deprivation, which would be anything 6 hours and less, which a huge amount of our population, that's all they're getting, it affects every single function of our body. So it affects our ability to heal, it affects our emotional health, it affects our physical health. Like when we're asleep, like a whole host of amazing thing goes on. And you need that full sort of 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep, not in bed, in order for that to happen. And particularly when we're thinking about emotional health, and I know sort of in the farming community there's issues around mental health. It's those last couple of hours before you get up in that 8-hour cycle where you emotionally reset. And so when you lose that, you reduce your capacity to cope with stress and to cope with what's going on emotionally. And I think also, thinking in that wider national sort of thing with obesity, like when we're sleep deprived, hormonally, you are wired to eat. And so if I start asking somebody to lose weight and do the nutritional stuff, but they aren't sleeping, it's pointless, because your appetite hormone goes up, your leptin, which is the one that tells you you're full, doesn't function. You become insulin resistant, so you're not responding properly to your sugars, and your impulsivity goes up as well. So you're more likely to eat that sugary snack. So if I was to start anywhere around, how to recover health and how to really build health, the bottom thing would be prioritising sleep. And for some people they just need to prioritise, but some people they don't know how to sleep. And I'm one of those things, it's really elusive. As soon as I'm stressed, I'm lying there thinking, And there's something called sleep hygiene, which are practices that you can do around light and caffeine and what have you, that helps you get good quality sleep. And on my website there's a little cheat sheet on some of those things that you can do to help do that. But you can train yourself to get good quality sleep. The 3 big things would be routine, getting caffeine out of your diet, because it sits in your body for 6 to 12 hours and it opposes your sleep urge, and it would be screens at night, so reducing your exposure to blue light at night. And then there's a host of other little bits that you can add into that in order to get good quality of sleep. But I mean all of them. I mean, stress impacts sleep, and we have a massive pandemic with stress, which reduces our immunity, increases our risk of cancer, reduces our creativity, reduces our ability to heal. I mean, it's just, so if I was to do 2 things, it would be get people sleep, reduce their stress. Then let's start talking about food. Let's start about getting moving. Yeah. Let's talk about connection.
And is movement your 3rd principle?
So they really do. So it's sleep, it's nutrition, it's movement, it's rest, which is my stress management bit, and it's connection. And they do all work together. And I mean the science around movement, I think we have less of an issue getting people to move. They know they should move. Everybody does.
But we don't move enough up, is it?
No. I mean, sitting is the new smoking. Yeah. So, in terms of risk to our health. Yeah. And actually, I think farmers, this is less, maybe not, but I think it's less of an issue. They seem to be more active than most of the people.
Yeah, some of us.
Many you stuck behind computers.
We all are stuck behind computers as well, or sat on tractors, or I mean, the industry we're in is massive. It's not just practical farmers. We're dealing with agronomists, advisors, lecturers, food nutritionists, everybody within this space. It's massive.
And it's really interesting because there's some big research out of America and Canada that show that, you know, even if you go to the gym, you know, and do your thing for an hour, or you go for your run, if you sit for 6 to 8 hours after that, it doesn't increase your, you know, longevity, you know, how long you live, and it doesn't reduce your risk of disease. And there's this tendency to think, oh, I've done that. And then I sit. We have to rethink about how we sit. You know, getting up for breaks, using the upstairs loo, getting off the bus. You know, stop earlier. Just those things that it's inconvenient.
Yeah. And mindset change is really it's hard. And as Holly said, you need to practice at it and make it to become routine. And it's exactly the same with farmers changing the way they farm. I've often seen how much of a mindset change is needed. To help them overcome maybe what they think their neighbour's going to think, or how what they're doing is judged, whether they're doing something different to how things have always been done in their valley or whatever it may be. And there are stories of farmers sort of outcasted for doing things a bit differently. So there's a lot of those fears to overcome and to feel the confidence of making a change and doing something different, have the faith to do it.
I mean, this is a bit where mindfulness and meditation fits in, because meditation, you know, does two things. One, it increases this thing called neuroplasticity, so this ability for our brains to rewire, which you need in order to make changes. So, and then the other thing it does is it shrinks our amygdala, which is the area in our brain that's to do with our stress. So, and it kind of decouples it from, you know, that ability to make good rational decisions. So, so we need Holly, you know, getting them meditating and being mindful in order to help us making those changes in other areas of our life and rewiring the way we do things. I mean, it's all interlinked, isn't it?
And all the knock-on benefits of, I think, trying to understand that actually the less stressed that you are, the more creative you can become. You know, when we get stressed out, our neural networks actually shrink back. The worst thing that you can do when you've got a problem or a challenge is to sort of sit and keep banging your head against it. It's making it worse, which is why, you know, if we can't get people meditating, like you say, increasing that neuroplasticity and really increasing this grey matter in our prefrontal cortex, so it's memory and concentration. At least just go and have a walk and just listen. And perhaps a mindful walk, because I think I was reading about more functional movement, because we might be farmers might be moving day to day. Actually, they're doing the same actions. They're not really actually stretching out their body. They're really suffering from those sort of tight backs, often from stress. You know, or we're hunching over and just getting tighter and tighter. So, thinking about the type of movement that we're doing.
And the secret is, you know, it's like, you know, change is about taking something we do normally and adjusting how we do it. So, you know, if you're always walking down to that barn, it's thinking, well, how do I do that 200-metre walk differently? And, well, I'm going to make that 200-metre, I'm going to be more mindful, I'm going to notice what things smell like, look like, feel like, you know, and I'm going to stretch out my body. And it's we don't have to suddenly sign up to the gym, and we don't, you know, it's about those little changes so they become an integral part of our everyday lives that then enhance our health and well-being.
Okay. One reason we're here is because of COVID, and we wanted to do a bit more around wellness, well-being, resilience. Just very briefly, tell me your experience through the last 3 months and where it might now take you, Russ.
For me, it's been a real positive, actually. I know that's not the case for everyone, so I'm not sort of being big-headed about it, but it's been a chance where the world has sort of slowed down. There's been some calm, so it's been a good time to really reflect and to think about where I'm going, where the world's going, where family are going, and particularly how important food is, because of how that's been impacted by any restrictions we've had and how we can access food and what food we can access. Can we get the stuff that we want? So it's sort of thrown in some questions, but I think now as we sort of started to come out of the lockdown, it's really now, for me personally, thinking, well, how do I take those lessons and those reflections and actually put them into my future every day?
I think many of us are in the same boat, actually. In the rural sector, you know, farming continued. A lot of us did get closer to our markets. A lot of us tried to sell direct. We spoke to more people, but we slowed down. You know, just my personal story, I spent 3 months on the family farm, the first time in my life, with my children, with my wife, growing stuff, feeding each other, working hard, waking up tomorrow, doing the same, but having a little less stress, more time to be creative. So I got some new enterprises off the ground. And I think we have to grasp these challenges quickly before we lose them and get back to the old ways. There's going to be some awful things happening in the future with recession and health, etc. But we must grab hold of these opportunities somehow. Holly, what's your experience of the last 3 months, and where are you heading next?
Very similar. I loved lockdown. I think, for many of the similar reasons, and largely because I'm a great believer that real change only comes in crisis. And I think we just got masses of opportunity to change. It's a really big wake-up call for people. I suppose personally, with the people that I work with, there was a couple of things that I was almost a bit smug about. So mindfulness is one part of the Focused Farmers programme, and the other part is around goal setting, which very much is still connecting to your purpose. Where are you going? What is your why? And what I encourage people to do, which they do by meditating, which will increase their state of mind as it is, to set big goals, dream big, and open yourself up to the possibility that anything can happen. And having a global lockdown was a pretty good example of that. And the second thing is that although when we're at our best, we do feel like we're in control of our lives, the only thing we actually have the ability to control is our state of mind. We have no idea what's going to happen in our life. So if we can concentrate on managing our state of mind, then really we can handle whatever comes along.
Okay, brilliant. And Sally, you returned to the NHS through COVID.
Yes,
One of our heroes.
I know about that, but so I've been doing urgent care general practice, which I do love, but I think for me it has been a real time of reflection, even though I've been doing that. And I am excited that there seems to be an awakening around the importance of nutrition and food, which I haven't seen before. There's a massive swathe of our population that still don't understand that what they eat affects their health. And so I just find there's a lot more people asking stuff about lifestyle. And I am absolutely convinced that we can reverse the tide of chronic disease, through some really simple principles and sort of putting power back into people's hands and not having to medicate everything. So I feel like it's a really exciting time, and I think it's just encouraged me to keep pushing on with my message.
Absolutely.
And just wanting to put those tools into people's hands about how to do that.
Okay. So just finally, really, how can we engage, Sally, with more of your work? If people want to find you, what should they do?
Thank you. So I have a website, drsallybell.com, so you can sign up to my newsletter, and I will drip feed you all the wonderful things you can be doing to recover your health. And then on the usual sort of social media platforms, my handle is Dr. Sally Bell. And then obviously you're hoping to do some stuff with you next year.
Yeah,
so
we'll be having some Farmed modules on your 5 foundations and eating well, etc.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
So that'll be fun. And I'm just working on some online teaching at the moment where people can buy courses, how to reverse their diabetes, their thyroid issues, and just help them recover their own health.
Brilliant. And Holly, how can we engage with Focused Farmers?
You can go to focusfarmers.com, and there's a free video series still on there, actually, with a partner of mine, Willie Horton, who's the psychologist I work with. So it's a free 12-part mini-series, and you can have an introduction about how utterly mad we actually all are.
Definitely.
There's a few free meditations on there and some exercises, and I would say just give it a go before you judge it.
And Russ, you're around,
I am.
You're helping, you're mentoring, you're working with individual businesses and youth.
That's right, yeah, doing a little bit of consultancy at the moment and starting a few different groups, but I can be found on the usual social medias with the handle Cider Russ because I'm also a cider maker.
Yeah,
my spare time.
Another podcast.
Yes, good. Must be a big topic, that one.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful stuff. I know we've only just touched the surface and there's lots more to do. Get yourselves here to FarmEd. Let's learn more together. Let's do some knowledge exchange events. I can't wait. Massive challenges ahead, but lots of opportunity. Thank you very much. You've been listening to podcast number 6. We've been sat here at least 3 metres apart here at FarmEd, all very safe, in the sunshine. Let's do some more. Thank you very much for listening. The production of this podcast was funded by the Farming the Future Coronavirus Emergency Response Fund. Thank you to the A-Team, Roddick, Samworth and 30 Percy Foundations for your support.